NewsTalk 710 KURV, audio on demand.
Story came out, I think it was May 2nd when the Monitor released his story, how San Juan Cinco de Mayo festival was delayed and it was going to be combined with a Memorial Day event.
It makes perfect sense.
No, it doesn't.
They're both beer-drinking holidays.
I know. When you see, that's horrible. When you first read the headline, I'm sure a lot of people were upset. People probably felt offended. A lot of veterans are like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Kind of like face palm.
Right.
You're serious right now? Anyway, so we have in studio Lupita Perez. Can you tell us about yourself, Lupita, before we continue? Your title, what you do, and why you're joining us?
Absolutely. My name is Lupita Perez. I'm the post commander for Post 7473 out of Elsa, Texas. I served in the military in the Army a total of 14 years. I deployed to Iraq, served over there over a year. I was boots and grounds a year and 5 days, and actually was gone from my home for 18 months.
Wow.
She has children.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have 3. At the time, they were all teenagers. I am a big veteran advocate. Obviously, it's personal. I have a son in the military that just deployed to Turkey. I have a nephew that was in southern Iraq and now is on his way to Jordan. So the list goes on and on. So when it comes to veterans, I try to be the voice for those that can't speak or those that need help.
Last time when we met you, we were doing a remote in Weslaco in Fiat, I remember, and we just were blown away by your story. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I know that after 9/11 happened, you were a mom of 3 and you just decided to enlist again. Can you tell us about that?
After 9/11, I told my husband, I got this patriotic feeling. I said, there's something I've got to do. I know I have children, but I'll join the reserves. I'll just put my part.
Yeah.
And after the reserve, I signed in a dotted line, and here comes orders to go.
You had not served before?
No, not overseas. No.
Okay.
And so what they did is they activated me, sent me to Fort Hood, attached me to 1st Cavalry Division, and I was flying overseas next thing I knew, and my husband was home with 3 teenage kids.
Wow. And now that you have a son that's overseas, how does he feel knowing that his mom did that whenever 9/11 happened?
He has been so proud of me, and I think that I had a big impact on him joining the military. However, I told him, join the Air Force. They really make sure that you complete your education. So there he is. He's on his way over there, and he's emotional, and so am I.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
So we will be talking with the mayor. So we'll get that. We'll get that. I don't want to say that side of the story. We'll get their accounting of what happened. But let's not assume anything. What was it about and what was it about the city of San Juan's desire to combine their Cinco de Mayo celebration with the marking of Memorial Day? What was it that you...
Well, what I read in the paper was the fact that it was more of an economic thing. They were trying to save money. I'm not sure it was a shortage of money or something.
Well, their Economic Development Corporation
it says they're
is in the hole, and they're still trying to figure out, from what I read in the news, they're still trying to figure out what happened.
Correct.
So.
But it's disturbing. My Facebook with my VFW just lit up this morning of comments and really those angry faces of how they felt it was very inappropriate. It's very, very 2 distinct things. Federal holiday of observance for men and women who have lost their lives in defense of this great country to holiday, well, not even a holiday, a day not even celebrated in Mexico for the Batalla de Puebla, which is, something that's...
The first defeat of Maximilian. I just finished reading a biography of Maximilian, but it really is...
So this is how it started, though.
In America.
So the article came out. We're trying to just lay it all out. The article came out. We invited you. You were on This Morning with Sergio.
Correct.
And at that time, we were all under the impression that it was still going to continue. They were going to combine the 2 events together. And speaking to you off air, a lot of most veterans, I would assume, they don't like it when people celebrate Memorial Day. It's not a day of celebration.
Not at all.
So then, what happened after?
Well...
After this morning show.
After I left here, I put a call into the city and I waited for them to open their doors. And very nice young lady answered the phone and said she would relay the message to whoever's in charge of this project. So I waited actually till late this afternoon. I did receive a call by a gentleman, Mr. Arjona, and told me that it had been canceled or they were just not going to include Memorial Day with their Cinco de Mayo celebration.
Wow.
He did reiterate that he had families that were veterans, and he understood, and that there was a lot of upset veterans and just people in general.
What is the day to celebrate being a veteran?
Veterans Day, November 11th. That is a day set aside for veterans.
Because even I get
the difference is Veterans Day is for all veterans, and you know, those of us that made it home, still alive here, they celebrate. It's a day set aside to thank us. That's November 11th, and Memorial Day is a somber occasion. It's something that it was known as like a Decoration Day, right?
Decorate the grave.
Right. And they would put flags across here and abroad, wherever we have soldiers buried. And it's not a day for barbecues and drinking beer. It's a day to remember, especially those Gold Star families that lost their loved ones. Yeah. We have a lot of Gold Star families here in the Valley that their wounds are fresh. They recently lost members. And I can imagine what they felt like when they read that article.
That's so sad.
Even weirder, of course, we'll find out what they're thinking. I assume San Juan was just trying to make the best of the deal, but even weirder was to move Cinco de Mayo to May
21st. 21st, yeah.
21st.
It was a cultural heritage day that they wanted to name it.
All you Poles coming will celebrate the defeat of the French. You're older than Roxanne, not as old as I am. I don't remember Cinco de Mayo being much of anything, and I always joke, although Roxanne gets put out with me, it's like what the beer guys got together and said, how can we sell some beer? I know. Everybody likes a party. Let's do Cinco de Mayo.
Right.
And, you know.
Let's put some maracas together and put beer, and who doesn't like beer?
Unless you're fresh across the border, it doesn't mean anything to you.
That's correct.
It's like I wonder, Roxanne, if you're a Mexican, if you're an American of Mexican heritage, right?
Like me.
Like you. Your dad, maybe Cinco de Mayo means something to him, but it doesn't mean anything to you or to your mom.
Not really. No.
So I'm wondering if the Italians, the Poles, the French, the Vietnamese, I wonder if all those guys go, we need to, I'm being totally serious. I wonder if they mark any particular day in the history of the country from which they come.
I was thinking exactly that.
I can understand it if you're fresh off the boat, kind of, sort of. I don't understand it, although I'm thinking to myself, Ms. Perez, in New York, they had the Festive San Gennaro, which I went to, and I'm not sure they even have Little Italy anymore. And that was, I don't know what we were celebrating. There was a lot of wine, I remember that.
I understand the big cities where you do have a area where it's predominantly one culture. But the Rio Grande Valley here, and I understand we're right on the border, but in general, there's been pictures all over in the news and on Facebook that shows Puebla today. There's nothing happening, and the Rio Grande Valley or the United States is going crazy on Cinco de Mayo.
It was remarkable because the sort of ragtag Mexican army defeated a pretty good army that brought over by the French. So
and if you ask 80% of the people, they'll probably tell you, we're celebrating Mexico independence, which is incorrect.
Which is not true. It's the 16th
That's what they'll tell you.
I suppose Memorial Day is a kind of celebration in one sense of the word of American independence. I mean, if you want to put it that way, people going abroad and dying in the service of their country.
Right.
Ostensibly to protect the freedom. I think it was more, World War II is probably the one that made it, because that was what I'm not sure if we had not gone to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, our liberties were at risk. Not immediately anyway.
Right.
In World War II, they were.
May 8th is Victory Over Europe. And that's a World War II celebration. The VFW observes that. We do that. So there's days that we actually set aside for that, because it was a victory and there's a celebration, and we can bring out the beer and have a good time. But Memorial Day, we personally go to a local cemetery, take wreaths, and remember. We have people, 5-star, Gold Star families that go up and speak and tell us about their loved ones they lost.
We're talking with Lupita Perez. She is the post commander of VFW Post 7473 in Elsa.
You were talking earlier about your Facebook page and how when you posted this article online, you had a lot of your veterans also just upset. Can you tell us what they were saying, what they were feeling, how? But now we know that the event is canceled, but just for other cities out there, don't do this.
Sure. They the first thing, they were obviously very, very upset, and they basically told me that it was something that was ridiculous. They don't buy the Cinco de Mayo reason for culture, when even Mexico itself doesn't celebrate the day. And then Cinco de Mayo is made up day by the beer merchants, is what they're saying. It's a somber day, a holiday, a federal holiday, remembering those who served and left part of their lives in a battlefield in other countries in the fight for our freedom.
I want to ask you, Lupita, when it comes to how many people from the Valley actually enlist in the military? Would you have those numbers, or do you know anything off the top of your head? How many come home? Because someone told me who was in the Navy and he worked as a medic, so he worked with Marines and he was all over the world. He one time told me that a lot of people from the Valley, like a huge number from the Valley, enlist, and he was there's not that really much light shined on that issue.
What I do know, Roxana, is that compared to the rest of the nation, we are way up there of enlisted and lost at war. Our tiny little area competes with the biggest areas of the United States of having more people go to war and also lost their lives. Wow. That I know.
How many, there's a VFW post in Elsa. Is there one in Edcouch?
No, Edcouch, Elsa, La Villa, all the Delta areas actually. Even Mercedes doesn't have a VFW. We have members from there. We have members from Westlaco. Westlaco doesn't have a VFW either. They have American Legions, though, but not a Veterans of Foreign War.
You can't be a member of the Veterans of Foreign War unless
if you didn't serve in a war. You have to have served in war, and there's some exceptions. Korea, 30 days with certain medals will qualify you for the Veterans of Foreign War due to the hostile areas you could have served.
Oh yeah. There's the Korean War. They call it the Forgotten War.
Yes, sir.
And I didn't read it. I listened to it on CD. Remarkable.
Yes,
I knew a guy, a Marine. He had served in Korea, and he said they captured this Chinese guy. Remember, the Chinese were infiltrating, and the reports were going back to MacArthur, the overall commander, and he dismissed them. He said, it's not, But, sir, there's X number of them, and it's just stragglers. And they got this guy, and he was wearing quilted clothing, and they got the tent really hot. And he's in this quilted clothing, and then somebody comes in, he starts stropping a knife, a bayonet. The guy gets more nervous and more nervous. Pretty soon, he's telling them whatever they want to know.
Your face.
I'm like,
Lupita, I hear his stories every single day.
It's good.
Because you can see it in your mind's eye, that poor Chinese guy who they plucked him up and sent him, and did he even know where he was or why he was there? This is 1950, 51. They just won the revolution, so.
Right.
What's going to happen to me? Well, how do I get out of this? It's 23 minutes past the hour. We're talking with Lupita Perez, who is the post commander of the VFW post in Elsa, talking about, you'll have to stay tuned to find out what we're talking about here on 710 KURV. Talking about now, and the circumstance changed from morning to afternoon. Lupita Perez is with us. She is post commander of the VFW post in Elsa, number 7473. And she received the same phone call we got, which was, they backed off. They were going to combine the Cinco de Mayo observation in San Juan with Memorial Day. And they were going to move Memorial Day earlier and Cinco de Mayo later and make them together. Although, according to the newspaper account, there was no explanation as to what was to happen. And they've said, no, we're not going to do that. So we're back to the way it was before. And they're going to do something else for Cinco de Mayo.
I do want to ask you, now that we have you here, Lupita, as a woman, how do you feel about this whole, the talk about women enlisting in the draft?
I'm open to it. Women in infantry roles.
And that too.
Being a woman and knowing your limitations, just like a man knowing your limitations, I think it's individualized. It's who you are and what you're capable of doing. I don't think it should be decided by gender. I think that women are very capable of taking on men roles, and men are very capable of being at home with the kids, like my husband was with all three of them. The house didn't burn down, the bills got paid, and I went off to war. So obviously it's something that can be done. We just as individuals need to know our limitations and what we're able to do.
Since we talk on air and off air, sometimes I get confused about when we talked about it. Do we ask you what you did in the war, Mommy?
No, but I can tell you, I'm an engineer. I actually have 3 different MOSs that I am certified and went to school for. And MOS is a military skill.
Okay.
One of them was a fueler, so I can fuel jets and stuff like that.
You're such a bee.
The other one is...
How hard is that? You stick the thing in and
Well, there's a lot of
right?
any little friction with JP5, JP8, which is a fuel. I mean, it'll explode. So you have to know a lot of basics on it. And another one is supply, and of course, an engineer. I'm a heavy equipment operator. I was attached to the combat engineers. So we did a lot of convoys. We did a lot of construction, a lot of demolition, a little bit of everything.
Lupita said that when they were traveling, they were in armored vehicles and they would hear the small arms fire. How far away are they when they're shooting?
Well, it varies, and it's really hard to hide in the desert. However, we were stationed right off of Saddam Hussein's Air Force Base in Al-Taji, Iraq. So the Tigris River ran through there. There were places for them to hide. So it was kind of hard to tell. Of course, if a mortar round came in, that we knew they were pretty close.
I would assume, given the IEDs, improvised explosive devices, that you're on edge the entire convoy.
Absolutely. We learned to push everybody aside and drive right in the middle of the road, nonstop. And, if we couldn't be on the sides of the road, the edges of the road, which is where they would put the IEDs.
And one ever go off in your convoy?
Not on my convoy. However, we often traveled what's called a Hell's Highway, and there were craters that were so big that really we had to swerve every 10, 15 feet to avoid a big old crater.
So in terms of the discussion, I read a story in which the Secretary of Defense told Marines, he said, the issue of women in combat roles is closed, which I thought was brave of him to tell them that. But the details have still to be worked out, at least in the Marine Corps. They're resisting having women in what you call...
Infantry.
Infantry, right.
Because women have been in combat for, 20, 30 years now because of the roles, bring them in, but they're not out fixing bayonets and charging. Right.
The difference is exactly that 11 Bravo infantry, we weren't in that position. Now we are, or they're thinking about letting us in there. There is some things to iron out. Obviously, women have some things that they have to deal with that men don't. So those are where the issues come. I had to drive with a very young man, carrying my excavator, and of course going to the bathroom and doing some other stuff was the hard part.
Lupita Perez, she's the post commander, VFW post, Veterans of Foreign War post 7473 in Elsa, and she's got to get back because she's manning her position there, manning her post, and will not be overrun by those men in
Thank
the VFW
you for being
post.
with us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. It is a pleasure.
So stay tuned to hear what the city has to say about all this next on the drive home on 710 KURV.